All right, Brett, you are all decked out in the appropriate gear for the race of Saturday. You got the Hoka sweatshirt, you got the Canyons hat. You're just missing the by UTMB insignia, and you'd have the complete package.
I know this hat is going to be a retro classic someday because it doesn't say the by UTMB part.
I and on my side, I haven't done laundry in like 10 days, so I'm wearing a paint splattered shirt, and I have a cat perched on my neck. So we couldn't be in more opposite scenarios here. You've got the
Yeah.
ambiance, I've got chaos.
I mean, the haircut's looking clean, the mustache is looking sharp. I feel like you're like channeling your inner Freddie Mercury or something, which, I mean, those are good vibes.
You got to let your freak flag fly on race day, and I'm fully preparing for that.
Yeah. Like
So,
if you can get a power stance, like
amen. Well, we're here today. Typically, we do the long run archives together, but I'm not sure if this is going to be nested in that, but we're doing the Canyons 100K preview. There's already been quite a bit of fanfare. We both have a couple tabs open. I Run Far has done a men's and women's preview. Treeline Journal did a preview. Free Trail launched fantasy ultra running, I think, this week, and Canyons is going to be a part of it. So I feel like each year in this sport, the fanfare, the build up, the hype to races gets bigger. And I don't know, are you feeling the same thing this week?
there's been a lot of talk just about this race. I mean, not only because there's, again, one more golden ticket on the line, but I feel like, there's always that talk of like, when and where does the next generation of like ultra runners come from? And I don't know if it's just me like really taking a much deeper dive into it this year, but I feel like because last year and the year before were kind of I don't know, everyone gets a pass. Those 2 years really let some people like grow and evolve into like the new wave of ultra ballers, and I feel like I've just been seeing a lot of that, this winter and spring of racing, which definitely makes for the previews for these races really exciting because there's a lot of big clashes going on and definitely a bit of unknown as well, which really always makes for an exciting day of racing out there.
Yeah, I think you make a good point. We've talked in previous episodes about where one generation ends and another begins, and how there was sort of a delay in the ascension of the current or next generation because of COVID. Obviously, Adam Peterman is one of those runners who represents the new generation. Is there anybody else in this field that you think also you'd categorize in that generation of runners?
I mean, I think at the moment, like Adam Peterman is doing some very special things. And I think he's right now kind of in a class of his own on the newcomer side. But there's definitely, I should have written like the ages or number of years of racing next to all the people that I wrote down. But there's definitely some people who have not a huge history of results on their ultra sign up, but like, just in the last year or year and a half have some really good results. A lot of the names that I wrote down, this will be the longest race that they've done. Maybe not necessarily from just being 100K. A lot of these people have done 100K before, but this is probably the hardest or the slowest 100K that they've done.
Yeah.
So whenever you get to that point where you're racing flat out, but it is also the most time you've ever spent on your feet in a running race, that always just throws up even more uncertainty. So that can, lend to the hand of experience and people who've done it before. But some of these people, like Adam Peterman's been on a tear recently. Ryan Miller in the last, year and a half, he recently just won the Gorge Waterfalls 50K. He's had some really good results and, seems to be like on a bit of a like journey for himself just this past spring.
Hero's
and then
journey.
and then you have someone like Reed Coolset, who's technically not a young guy anymore. Sorry, Reed, but he's new to the trails. So there's a lot of new running talent at this race. And I'm just looking at the men's side right now because that's just what I had on this current doc. And then like on the ladies' side, it's even like there's even more young talent. Like there's a whole bunch of people who have like, you know, 2 or 3 recent races, but nothing prior to, you know, like 2018 or 2019. But at the same time, just based off their, you know, if you're only as good as your last race, there's some people who could win this thing in their first 100K.
I want to stay on this generational talking point for a second because I'm going to say something that might be controversial. Feel free to call me on it. But
let's hear
when
it.
I first looked at this entrance list 2 or 3 weeks ago, I thought to myself, holy shit, there's 25, 30, maybe even 40 runners that could legitimately contend at least for a top 10 spot, maybe even a golden ticket. Like, and I thought to myself, is this the deepest non-Western states American event ever? And, you know, I think immediately to like Black Canyon in like 2019, races like that, like Sonoma in some years. But then I looked pretty closely at this list over the last 48 to 72 hours. I don't think that this field is as deep as I thought it was. And I think I bring up the word generation a lot here because I think we get hung up on names that were at the very top of the sport 5, 6, 7 years ago that might not have the same legs to be competitive. So again, I'm going to preface this all by saying I have the utmost respect for these people. They're like heroes of mine, but I wonder if they're actually going to be in contention. So folks like Sage Canada, who I just listened to an episode he did with 10 Junk Miles, great podcast, we'll link to it. His story in the last year has been insane. Like he had a pulmonary embolism, his house burned down. I think he had another family tragedy. So he's been out of it. He's back on the line. Zach Miller, Jason Schlarb, Mark Hammond. Even though Jared Hazen's 26, he's a vet. Like I wonder what he's going to be doing.
Absolutely,
he's a veteran. Yeah. Like what? But so over the last 3 years, these names have been kind of silent on the scene. But when I had that bias of like I knew who they were in 2016, so I immediately think they're contenders. And when I think of like those names and a couple more, the list whittles down more to like I don't know, like a 10 or 15 core runners that I'm really thinking could challenge for a spot on race day. So I wanted to say that. You can challenge me on it, but I have more realistic expectations, I think, now on race day than I did 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when we first talked about that, and I mean, when you said like this might be the deepest ever, I've at least been going to these races and following them, you know, just a few years longer than you. And I was like, I have some memories of races that I feel like were as good or better.
Yeah.
And now looking back on it, I agree. I think there have been races in the US that are not Western states that had better fields.
Yeah.
That's not to say that this one might not be the best ever because the race hasn't happened yet. And there's a whole bunch of big question marks, you know, like you said, like there's 15 people on both the men's and women's side who are fit enough to win the race.
And to go sub 10 at least.
Fitness alone does not win this race. It doesn't even come close. You have to, you know, maybe that's a good time to kind of talk into some of the, like, what do you need to do to
let's talk about it.
At this race? 100K is interesting. A lot of people opt for, do I race it like a long 50 mile or do I race it like a short 100 mile? And I don't know where I stand for this particular race. I lean towards race it like a short 100 mile because this is the type of course where the race is not over until you hit the finish line because of how long the last climb is to the finish. You know, someone could look amazing on the last descent and just come out of the finalization. They're like, oh, they're a lock. But if they hit that last climb and they're run out of gas, not feeling good, you could be losing multiple minutes a mile to someone for 9 miles at the end. So, you know, playing it a little bit conservative and, you know, making sure you are able to continue to really grind out those climbs in the second half, I think it's gonna be important. Even last year on that last climb, the top 10 shuffled a lot in that last climb.
Are there going to be people, men's or women's side, that you think are, regardless of how you've analyzed it there, they're going to be inclined to race it right from the gun? Like, it's not going to be a race for them where it starts at X aid station, like Forest Hill, for example?
I think it's funny. It's what I'm saying almost like on paper contradicts myself in saying that, like, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people who are veterans who have been in the sport longer go out harder, because not because that's dumb, but because they have a better idea of how much they can kind of thread the needle before blowing up. Like Tim Frericks and Jared Hazen have had good races, going to the front, controlling
some of the greatest,
going out hard and knowing that they can just fade less than everyone else. It's exactly what True Heart Brown did to win Black Canyon. In February, he went out hard, and then when he realized he was by himself, he was able to then kind of moderate his energy and how hard he was trying based off of what the gaps behind him were. So then he got to just kind of put it in cruise control, and then you get to an aid station and be like, oh yeah, they're 2 minutes behind you, and you'd be like, okay, I gotta make sure to work a little bit here. And being in control can sometimes really play into your favor if you can survive going out a little bit too hard. And that kind of strength definitely lends to one runner over the other. And there's somewhere I'm like, can Adam Peterman do that? I have no idea. Maybe he can go out hard and just be totally fine. That's what Anthony Costales did last year. I just went on a long run with Cole Watson this past weekend, and it was him and Anthony and Max for like the lead guys for a while. And he said, he was like, yeah, me and Max were working. We were still comfortable, but we were definitely like kind of looking at each other like, why is this guy not working anywhere near as hard as we are? And we're at the front of the pack. Like Cole said, Anthony was just bounding up the climb to get to Forest Hill, like no big deal. And yet he was still in the front.
One of the greatest strides in all of ultra running. If you ever get a chance to watch Anthony run, it's a thing of beauty. It's a thing of art. Yeah.
So that's what Cole was saying, was like, I mean, yeah, we were all at the front, and like, he still looked really good, even though he probably, maybe he could have run a little faster had the whole front pack gone through the first half a little bit slower, but it didn't matter because he still ended up being the best runner in the second half. So I guess what I'm getting at is, like, you do want to be a little bit conservative in the first half, but you can't let up that much room.
What's a lot of room in your opinion?
And I just asked myself that question too after the words came out of my mouth. I don't think a lot of room really comes down to any particular gap between someone. The amount of room might be more so like, what do you think you can run on this course? What do you need to do to run that time? Generally in a race, there's a couple different strategies you could go through to run that time, but which is the strategy that allows you to run that time, but also be very competitive at the end if it does come down to you either catching someone or running with someone. You still have to beat them.
Yeah.
And that answer is different for everyone. Like, I'm just going to use Sage Canada as an example right now. He's a really good climber. He's always been really good at runnable climbing. Like, he can just grind out climbs. So like in Sage's case, I think he could take it pretty chill all the way, the first 15 or 18 miles. What is that point? Oh, even farther than that, like 24, 25 miles before you start to climb up to Forest Hill. I bet he could take it pretty chill. And like, he's just the level of climber that he is. staying in his 100K effort, I bet he'll climb a lot of these climbs faster than people.
Yeah.
And if, that last climb is the type of climb where he could really benefit from having good legs on it and, move up a couple spots. Because it is, aside from the very first bit of that last climb, for the top men and women, it's pretty runnable. Like, you're running almost every step of it.
I know that we'll get to predictions later in the show, but I hope that Sage can have sort of a comeback performance in the same way that like Rob Carrara did at Leadville back in 2018, where, he was off the radar for a little bit and then he just goes and just smashes it. And again, just knowing what Sage has been through recently and how he's just been kind of out of the scene for a couple of years, it would be pretty sweet to see him do something cool in this course. And yeah, I mean, you look at the grades on a lot of the climbs, especially, it does suit his skill set. And for people that are more recent fans of the sport, Sage used to be like the guy, right? He was like one of the first, really,
especially in the 50K to 100K distance.
Yeah.
That was like his sweet spot.
Yeah.
Like North Face 50 mile,
Speed
Lake
Goat.
Sonoma. Yeah. Speed Goat. Like all of those things were like, even something like Speed Goat for someone like Sage, you're running a good amount of that course.
Yeah.
And that was always like right in his pocket, in terms of, ideal race distance. So, I think something like the Canyons could suit him really well. And his training has looked really good, recently. He's had to, purposely take a really long, slow build up, but, just because of coming off of that operation, he is only allowed to run a certain amount. But, Sage has also been, he's really good at training, perhaps almost too good at times. So this, I'm not going to call it a blessing in disguise, because you never want to have a pulmonary embolism.
Sure.
That sounds very scary. But
And I think that's what it was. I'm not positive.
That's what I thought too, but
Yeah.
I might, who knows? Maybe we're just making that up and just spreading false rumors. But Sage seems fit, and he hasn't raced in a while, and I'm hoping he has a good one too.
You have, I think, hinted at it a little bit so far in the conversation, but yeah, putting on your analysis hat for a second, what do you think it's going to take to win this race? Like, as you've been looking through the Strava files for various people on the men's and the women's side, are there any things that you're seeing in their training that would indicate it's going to translate well to this course and they're in a good position? Like, do you need to be what kind of climber do you need to be, descender, pacing, stuff like that?
So you do need to be really good at knowing when you're getting out of 100K effort, especially in the first half from a pacing standpoint, because I don't really look at pacing for these races like minutes per mile. Maybe you'll have a rough window for when you should hit various aid stations or get to Forest Hill.
Yeah. But
so much of it is, if I think I can run 10 hours. 10-hour effort is about this. On some of the climbs, I'm going to go a little bit above it. On some of the descents, you're probably going a little bit below it. But for the first, 4 or 5 hours of a 10-hour effort, it feels really easy, even if you're going 7 or 8 hour effort, which leaves you 2 hours or 3 hours of blowing up. The people that have done the better job of learning to differentiate between the correct easy and not quite easy enough are going to be the ones who really hammer the second half of the course. And, you do have to be right on the edge of the correct amount of easy, because if you're going way too easy, then, you're only going to, even on fresh legs, you can only run that second half of the course so fast.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if I've ever heard someone after a race come and be like, man, I really wish I went out harder. I don't think I've ever heard that for 100K. So that's probably not going to be the case.
Well, I'll put you on the spot again with your coaching hat for a second. Like, you just coached David Blaney to a win at the Gorge 100K. How do you determine that pace in training? Like, what kind of conversations are you having with David to say, I've looked at the data, this is probably where your best running is going to happen for 62 miles. Like, what does that all look like?
that's where the experience part comes in. Like I can tell him, you know, let's go on a 4-hour run, 100K effort, you know, for where he lives over in Bellingham. We're like, okay, on these trails, it's probably this many miles and this many feet. What do you think? And then he'll be like, yeah, that's probably about right. And he will absolutely nail it, you know, to the second, just because he's done it so much and he knows like what's 100-mile effort, what's 100K effort, what's 50K effort. So then it's something like the Gorge, where the whole goal of that race was be pretty conservative and do pretty much only what you need to win. Don't take the lead for the first half. Like that was an interesting kind of challenge where we were just kind of decided, like, if you find yourself in a front pack, don't even try to drop anyone for the first 30 miles. Like just do and see what happens. The other thing that David did a really good job of at the Gorge that I think is going to be important at a really, really deep race like the Canyons is your efficiency through the aid stations. That normally, like most of the athletes I coach, I tell them take the extra minute at the aid stations, like really look over the table, grab what you want, because for the other 95% of the field, you don't want to rush through the aid stations. You want to make sure that you come in with, you know, you're always a little frazzled going into them. And you know, you leave it and then you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to fill this bottle, or I forgot to grab 2 more gels. So that's always a big thing that, you know, I make sure we practice with a lot of my athletes. But when you get up to the very tip top of the fields, you don't have time for that. I mean, I bet the person who wins the race will have less than 10 minutes of stoppage time.
I'm going to mark that down. That's an interesting prediction.
Yeah. And that's important. I mean, if you have 20 minutes of stoppage time, you're still rolling through the aid stations pretty fast. But if someone else can do it in 10, you lose 10 minutes to them on the course right there. And that's just the level of competition that ultra running is at in these hyper competitive races. You just need to be good at knowing exactly what you're going to need when you come out of the aid station. Hopefully your nutrition is dialed and you're not to the point where you are like having to graze the table because you're done with goos, or, you know, you're like, oh, I got to switch it up. You know, hopefully you don't have to, and you can just be like, I need 4 gels. I need to fill one of my bottles with electrolyte. Or, you know, if you have crew, it's just a matter of like dumping your stuff, getting new stuff, and not needing to just eat at an aid station. You know, I think that's something that's going to be really important for the elites in this field.
The stoppage time is fascinating. It reminds me when I had Nick Curry on the podcast about 5 or 6 months ago. I'm going to mess up the year, but he told me one of the years he did Hard Rock, he had less than 3 minutes of stoppage time across all the aid stations, because as he was going into the aid station, his crew was just swapping out his packs that had everything prepackaged, like the bottles, nutrition, whatever. Insane. It can be the difference between anywhere from 10 to 15 to half an hour to an hour of time at races that are 100 miles in distance. So
absolutely.
That's wild.
So I think that's one of the like very small details that, you know, becomes a big detail at the elite level, especially now.
One other thing that I wanted to ask you before we move on to race conditions here, I would be curious if you found any data while you were going through the Strava files of these runners. When you looked at their long runs, were they doing their long runs at efforts that they could manage for 4 to 5 hours, or were they doing them at a 100K specific effort that they could manage for like 9 to 10 hours, in your opinion?
You know, most of the long runs I saw looks like they were all a little bit too hard. You know, like I saw some people going down to the Canyons course in February and March and doing their big training camps on the course. And, you know, every single long run that they did was at course record pace. Like, we're not all Anthony Costalis. And I bet he's also not doing his training run. Like 50K on the course at course record pace, that's a hard long run. Like half of your race distance at pace is a hard long run. Like you go do 13 miles at marathon pace, it's doable, but that's a hard run. Like when you're in training. So I did see a handful of, ones like that. I saw some other ones where the people who can are climbing a lot for this race. I saw some monster vert numbers in the training.
Like over 20K a week?
Yeah. I saw a handful of 20. And when you add some people who are skiing, I saw some strung together 30K weeks. And I think,
is that overkill for this race, or is that okay? Can you climb too much for this race?
You can. And the reason, it depends on the type of climbing you're doing. If all your climbing is up, 12, 1,500 foot a mile, you're hiking it all. And while there is some hiking at this course, there's a lot of running. Like I pulled up David Laney's 100K GPX, or not GPX, Strava, and I have the ability to separate cadence data so I can see minutes walked versus minutes run.
Yeah. And
I'm clicking it and actually nothing's coming up right now. But there it is. At Canyons last year, David ran 9 hours and 33 minutes. And that was with, 14,500 feet of climbing. He hiked for 30 minutes. And David is one to hike more than other people in races.
Okay.
Percentage wise, that means that's 5% of the time out there. So David ran for 95% of the course, and 95% of the time he was out there. He hiked for 5%. Some people I see in their training runs are hiking for like 25, 30% of the time that they're out there. I question at the, if we're looking at those who are trying to win this race, I question if that's too much. Then I see someone like Sage who's, climbing in that like kind of 15 to 18 type range, 15 to 18,000 feet a week. Most of it's running. He's doing some like uphill treadmill tempos at various percentages, usually percentages that match the average percentage of some of these climbs of the course, because he's smart and he's getting in that exact course specificity. And, he's still getting in an amount of like flatter speed work, because the first 20 miles you need to be able to run the first 20 comfortably if you want to have, a shot at winning this thing.
One sec, I got to get this cat out of the way. Squirtle, you got to go.
Your cat's name's Squirtle?
Squirtle, yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that.
Let's move on to race conditions before we talk about our predictions. You had the luxury of being on the course this past weekend and getting, I think, at least one long run in. What can you report back? And in your opinion, what can runners expect for race day?
So I went on a long run on I ran from Green Gate to the finish. So on the Western States course, it's like mile 80 to the finish. And I did it with Cole and a couple other friends. All of us worked at Rogue Valley Runners at one point, actually. So Ashland represent there.
The Rancheros.
The Rogue Valley Rancheros. You know what's up. When we ran on Saturday, it was a full-on monsoon. Like, it had started raining hard at about 3 a.m. and we were running by like 7 or 7:30. And by the time we started running, the entire course was a giant mud puddle, and every single little like creek crossing that's normally dry, they were all raging. That really, you only get conditions like that when it has been pouring for multiple hours and there's just that much water runoff. As soon as it stops raining, though, in Auburn, within a day or two, it dries up, and then there's just a few puddles out there. There's a little bit of rain in the forecast in Auburn for this week. It looks like the last of it comes on Thursday, or maybe into early Friday morning. So there's going to be almost 24 hours of time where there won't be any precipitation on the course. And I don't know what that means as you go further, north towards the finish. It wasn't that cold. So, I mean, I can't imagine it was snowing up there, but I guess that's a possibility. I mean, last year at the finish line, after about 15 hours, it did start snowing at the finish. So it's definitely possible.
It's going to be cool no matter what, right?
It's not going to be hot. No, I mean, I thought last year was going to be the one anomaly because it has definitely been hot at canyons in past years. But I mean, the weather's looking pretty nice for race day.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel like the course is going to be that beat up. I mean, bring your Technu because the Poison Oak is just popping right now. And I remember last year, as I got down to the river, I did run canyons last year, 2021. Yeah. When I got down to the river, which is, what is that, like 15 or so, 20 miles in, and then started the climb up to Forest Hill. I went through multiple miles where the Poison Oak was just like so big that it was just draping into the trail, and there's like zero avoiding it. And I'm running, I'm just like, they're like slapping me in the face, and I'm just like going like this. And there's a couple people behind me. I'm like, hey, is this Poison Oak? And they're just like frantically, yeah, that is Poison Oak. I was like, oh, well, fortunately, I don't get it. And they're like, that's why we've been letting you lead, because we thought you were just an idiot, which that's just something to like mentally prepare for, because it got in a lot of people's heads last year, because I was talking to people to finish, and they were like, just knowing that I had Poison Oak on my body for mile 20 and I had 40 more miles to go, like just got in my head. But, calf sleeves, wear those high socks, a lot of it's, on that like knee, shin, if you get it really bad, or, you get some of those, Technu wipes to have it like a drop bag at the finish so you can just wipe off. That'll just save a whole bunch of misery, like in the weeks after the race. But other than that, I mean, the trail's so nice. It's interesting running the canyons backwards. There's some rocks in the second half of the course, like coming down to El Dorado Canyon, I think is the one out of Michigan Bluff, the big one, the first big one that you do. That descent's got some rocks on it, and it's pretty steep. Like my IT band was starting to bug me at that point, just because there were some times where you're going down kind of like almost like rocky steps.
Yeah.
So that was definitely when it started to get challenging. And then coming up out of the other side of that first big canyon, because, it's like every time you descend, you climb like 20 to 40% more than what you just descended.
Yeah.
Which from a time standpoint is like triple. So if you can have a lot of just mental patience and just like keep grinding, that's going to be huge, to just know like it's going to be hard, and these climbs are going to feel like they are forever, because they are forever, because you literally finish uphill. But if you can be okay with that and just know that like, this is the discomfort moment I'm in, but it's okay, you will do a lot better.
Let's go to our predictions. You want to start with the men's field? I'll give you mine. And are we going top five?
I wrote down my top five. Okay. I also wrote down like a handful of names of like people that, like to look out for. Yeah. What do you got for your top five?
So top five, I got Tim Frericks winning. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and why?
Oh, and like why? Okay.
Why do you pick these people?
Okay. I'm going to say them and then I'll explain my why. So
Okay.
I got Tim Frericks number 1. I've got David Sinclair number 2, Chris Brown 3, Adam Peterman 4, Rod Farvard 5. Tim Frericks winning because I think you actually made this point. If you look at Tim's college career and then some of his most special performances throughout his career, and you compare that to like Jim Walmsley, for example, there's no reason, in my opinion, why he can't be on the same level. And I know that he has struggled or just been prioritizing other things or just been off the radar for whatever reason the last 3 to 4 years. I think he is capable of doing something special. I looked at his Strava training. He's done a lot of those classic, just grueling long runs in the canyons. And he did, I think, the Crown King Scramble 50K in the lead up to, got a course record there. So
uphill 50K.
Yeah, so that dude is in shape, and he's got a new sponsor, so maybe he's got a breath of fresh air there, and I just think he's going to do it. So that's my number 1. David Sinclair, if you don't know him, he's had a ton of success at Broken Arrow, Speed Goat, you name it, on like the true mountain 50K circuit. And then he's also just like an aerobic monster because he's got that cross-country skiing background. And it looks like his training has been in full force. He's done specific stuff. Chris Brown, similar. Not like a Nordic skier, but just like a monster in mountain scenarios. I think he just did that 9 Trails race in Santa Barbara, so his training has been good.
And he won that.
Adam Peterman is like Jim Walmsley V2. My only concern with Adam is he's inexperienced above 50 miles, and I think his 150-mile experience is JFK, which runs fast. It's like 5 or 6 hours time on feet. And then Rod Farvard in 5th, because I just know that dude's a grinder, and I was scrolling Twitter, researching him. He's done amazing work in the lead up, and he got the endorsement from Tim Tollefson, who said, watch out for Rod at Kansas.
Yeah, you sent me that, and I was like, well, if Tim says it, then he's got to.
If Tim says it must be true, and I'm not questioning it.
So. Well, and that's not just because Tim was like, just throwing fluff. I mean, it was because he like went on a run with Rod, and it was like they're training, because Rod's a mammoth guy.
And
so Tim's saying that out of like firsthand experience, and Tim knows what it takes to be good at these races.
And I know there's going to be a lot of folks that say, why do you have David Sinclair 2nd and Adam Peterman 4th when David is in a similar predicament as Adam, not having experience above, I think, 50K or 50 mile? I would say, you're spot on. That's true. I would just say that David has been in the ultra game longer. He's had a chance maybe to meditate on what it takes at these distances, and he's just got a little bit more experience. And in this case, I'm just going to choose that. I think my worry with Adam is just because the dude is so damn fast. He's going to race it from start to finish, and maybe you have to pay it back at some point, and maybe on that last climb to the finish he struggles. I don't know. I just, everyone's picking him to win, and I love being a contrarian, and anytime a majority of people say something, I always pause and reflect, and I think, what could happen alternatively?
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, David Sinclair, he's a big wild card because, like you said, he's like a legend in the shorter mountain racing.
Legend.
But at the same time, everyone's like, oh yeah, he's this aerobic monster. Like he just can breathe more air than everyone else. So then shouldn't that mean he could probably just jog at a comfortably slow pace forever? Why has he not tried this? I mean, maybe he just hasn't tried it because he's had so much success at, VK to 50K that he just hasn't like needed to. Kind of like, Max King probably could have been one of the better 100 milers, 10 years ago if he wanted to, but he chose to stay more in the speedier side of things because he had it. And, I mean, maybe that's just the luxury that David Sinclair has, in that he truly is so good that he might be able to pick and choose that wide of a range of events. Whereas most of these guys are forced into 100K, 100 miler because they cannot beat David Sinclair to VK.
Yeah. Yep. Great analysis. Who are your top 5 and why?
So given everything that you just said and how I like seem to back you up on that. I think Adam Peterman's going to win. And here's why. This is why I'm giving Adam Peterman the dub. He is, I don't know if he did this on purpose or what, but he is mirroring Jim Walmsley's end of 2015 to 2016 year, which is the year that Jim famously missed the turn at mile 93, but was on an absolute tear for, about 85 miles prior to that on the Western States course. So Adam Peterman wins Speed Goat last summer. Jim, is that true? Adam Peterman won Speed Goat last year.
He did. Course record, I think, too.
Okay. Jim ran Speed Goat, did not win. Then Adam goes to JFK, wins that. Jim Walmsley also did that after Speed Goat, and won it. So they both have a JFK win. Then what comes next? Oh, then Jim runs Bandera 100K.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the one little like difference in the blip where Jim went and ran Bandera. Adam goes and crushes the Chuckanut 50K. So they're kind of hitting the West Coast races. And now then Jim ran 6 hours at Lake Sonoma that April. This is now Adam's Lake Sonoma.
Yes.
And at the time, this is a little longer, but when Jim went and ran Lake Sonoma and just destroyed everybody, he got the second place was Tim Frerichs, his training partner.
Yeah.
I see a lot of similarities. I'm like, well, maybe Adam's just so good and he's got that kind of freshness on his side
League of his own,
not having that many years that he might just go to the front as long as he doesn't try and drop everyone in the first 15 or 20 miles. If he can just chill and run with whoever is also trying to lead through at least Forest Hill, if he can just do that, I think he's the guy to beat, even though it's the longest race he's ever done. Because he's in such good shape and he's so fast. That's going to help because, same deal with Anthony Costales. That's just the longest race that he had ever done too. And what he did was just do what the other people were doing for the first half. And then, okay, now it's time to win.
Yeah.
I think that's going to happen again.
One thing before you go on, I'll say about it. I just talked with Adam 2 or 3 weeks ago, and what a nice dude, what a humble dude, and I'm so glad he's in the sport. It's funny to compare him to Walmsley too, because Walmsley's very much let me tell you exactly what I'm going to do at this race and why I'm the best and why I'm going to win. And Peterman is more just taking every single race with a bit of reverence, oh man, this is impressive, and I don't know how I'm going to do here, and I don't know, just different personalities, but same skill set, same type caliber runner. It's very interesting.
They got similar fire out on the trail. So I picked Tim Frerichs to get second. I think he's kind of to that veteran type point where he's going to run a good, smart race. I picked him just getting second because Adam Peterman's just shown recently a little bit better results. I got Rod Farvard for third. His running on Strava's looked great. It looks like he's done some, that Eastern Sierra. If you can drive a little bit, you can get some pretty ideal training in the winter and spring for a race like this. And it looks like from a training standpoint, he's checked all the boxes. Fourth is a name that I don't think's been said yet. Brian Curl. I think he's going to get fourth. He got seventh at Canyons last year, which the field was pretty deep, and seventh is a good result. His training this year looks better. It looks like he's training, within himself. I'm not saying he's just hammering everything. That's not what I mean by better. His training, just looking at his last few big weeks, it's just looked really good. he's a Colorado, I don't know, native. He lives in Colorado, so he gets to drop down, a handful of 1,000 feet to this race, which is just going to be nice. He's going to luck out because it's not going to be 80 degrees on race day. So, if you've been doing all this heat training, good for you, but I don't think it's going to be a huge advantage this year.
One thing on Brian, we got to take credit for Brian here in Salt Lake because he just recently moved to Colorado, but he was here in Salt Lake proper for many years. And also he is coming off of a course record performance at the Running Up for Air Series, the 12-hour event. I think he lapped Grandeur Peak 8 times in 12 hours, which if you know Grandeur Peak, if you know the grade on that climb and just the demands, it's impressive. I mean, for context, Courtney Dauwalter was there too. She got 7 laps. So this guy is really, really strong. And like you said, 7th place performance last year. Yeah, impressive. So just want to say that.
Yeah. So I think, and I assume he's trained this past year to improve and just, we usually train to get better at this sport. So if he just worked on getting better, not worrying about anyone else, but just bettering himself, that's going to yield a good result. I have Sage Canaday for 5th.
Nice.
Yeah, I was really on the fence whether to throw Jared Hazen in there because if the right Jared shows up, he's a contender to win. But I just haven't seen that enough lately to confidently put his name on there. Yeah, and like I threw these names out there, like, those will probably be my picks for the Free Trail Fantasy. And if we're thinking like, if we're betting men, I don't know if I'm gonna risk my money on Jared just quite yet.
Yeah, I mean he's one. I mean, it's like you just said, which Jared shows up. Obviously, he's capable of some of the most special performances in the sport's history, but he DNFs a lot too, and he's struggled to put stuff together the last 2 to 3 years. So it's tough to say, but I mean, I'm a fan, so I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
Do you have any dark horses in this race, like outside your top 5, just like people to look for that might not be, household names?
So, I like Alex Gold. He's from Ohio. He has some legit result, and he has some long race experience. So he's gotten 4th at the Bear 100, and then he got 11th at Wasatch, and he's had a whole bunch of wins on, some smaller races, but his training looks super solid, and, he's kind of middling, the distance now for some of his racing. So I just kind of like what he's been putting together. I don't know anything about him or his racing style or anything, but just looking purely on, just looking at Strava and his race history. I mean, I like him as the dark horse. Maybe you'll be able to tell me more. So there's a huge Salt Lake contingent Utah group coming out to this race. Who is Grant Barnett? Surely there's more you can tell me about this guy. I'm going to quote a long run Strava quote from April 3rd.
We like
81 miles, 21,000 feet of vert this week. I'm ready to spank some fools at canyons. Not calling out the SLC dudes, just the so-called pro boys. They can't move uphill like I can. End quote.
Man, that might be worthy of a screenshot and then sent out to Trail Running Twitter. So I mentioned that, Brian Curl had that performance at Rufa. Grant can definitely back it up. He, at the same time that Brian set that 12-hour record, Grant set the 6-hour record at Rufa. So he did, I think, 4 laps, but with like an hour and 20 to spare. So flirted with a 5th lap. And he took Kyle Richardson's record there. And Kyle, former guest of the podcast, Boulder guy, really, really strong at that. I think he's like a Black Diamond athlete. Really strong dude. So it was like a stout record that he took. And Yeah, Grant is one of those people who, if you look at his training, you'd think he was training for speed goat and not necessarily this race, because a lot of like the climbing,
he loves a lot of vert,
a lot of stuff that's not really canyon specific. Yeah. But he's strong, man, and he's throwing himself out there with quotes like that.
Yeah, with talk like that, I'm expecting a podium finish. I'm expecting a golden ticket.
I want to know who the so-called pros are.
I mean, maybe the ones who are actually pros. Those are the so-called pros.
All right, well, I got to say a couple more things about the Salt Lake group. So you've also got Caleb Olson, who's incredibly strong, top 10 at Speed Goat last year. I think he was third American at CCC. Like, he was running with Chris Brown and Avery Collins all day last year at CCC and finished in 17th. Just fantastic performance. Garrett Corcoran, who ran at Cal at the same time Adam Peterman was running at Boulder. Garrett used to Garrett used to beat Adam some of the time. So, and I've done a ton of workouts with that guy. He's always a quarter mile ahead of me on every single rep. Just a beast. Jacob Grant, really strong. Spencer strong. Like, I'm expecting, and we didn't talk about the back half of the top 10, but I'm expecting at least 3 guys from Salt Lake, and I'm including Brian Curl in that mix, being in the top 10. I don't know which of them it's going to be, but it's going to be at least 3 of them, I think. And I actually think that Garrett probably has the highest upside. I think that he is somebody that has all of the fitness in the world to run with the likes of Adam Peterman. And it's just going to be a question of, like, his experience and how well he paces himself and nutrition and stuff like that. But yeah, I'll just say that about the Salt Lake guys.
Well, what about Finn Melanson?
No, I'm not.
I mean, you're in that Salt Lake crew. I mean, I know you had the little rib injury. I don't like calling them injuries. It's just a little minor setback. Your running's been looking good recently. Injuries
happen all the time. It happens to everybody. Yeah. I'm no different. I'm feeling healthy. I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. And I think that Ryan Gelfi, my coach, we just have a plan to run really smart, to not get caught up in any pack of people that are going out too fast. We're going to run really smart, maybe 4:30, 4:35 to 50K. And then hopefully that is a pace that allows me to have some energy in the second half, and hopefully I can scoop some people. But those other guys, I'm on the low end of the totem pole there in the Salt Lake group. Those other guys that I mentioned they're gonna, if anybody's gonna shine, it's gonna be them. So the one other dark horse I want to mention, I never overlook Flagstaff anymore. After missing Trueheart Brown pre-Black Canyon, there's this guy from Flagstaff. His name's, I'm going to butcher the name, but Ruari Moynihan, who's put in some really, really solid training for this race. He, again, just going off foot speed as a metric, the guy has run a 68-minute half marathon and a 2:22 marathon.
Okay, that's pretty solid. Okay. Oh, fun fact for the race. So here's your, does foot speed mean you can run a good ultra? So canyons, and on the men's side last year, the top 5, 4 of them have run in the Olympic trials in the marathon.
The only one that didn't was probably Noah Broad again, I'm guessing.
No, yeah, but it was Anthony Costales, Max King, Cole Watson, David Laney. All of them had run 2:18 or faster in the marathon.
There you go.
And that was your top 5. And
that's a great stat.
Yeah, I don't know if there was actually a time where there was that many. That's a good tweet right there. I didn't know at the time if there was even a race that had that many, like, Olympic trials marathon qualifiers in, like, an American ultra. So I just thought that was fascinating. And, like, as hard as this course is, you still got to be good at running.
Man, get that on Twitter, man. That's a good stat.
I've been trying to up my Twitter game a little bit recently, but I'm trying to bring Twitter back to how it was in its glory days of just, like, random shit posts. Like, that's what I love.
Let's go to the women's. Who is your top 5 and why?
Okay. So I've got Brittany Peterson winning. But I only have her winning if she, like, do we have confirmation that she is here and she is racing and, like, she's ready to go crush it? Because like she's already in Western States.
I have some intel. Yeah, so I just spoke with her 2 or 3 weeks ago. We're going to do a podcast, I think, later this year, maybe closer to Western States or after. But I caught her on the road to Auburn to go train specifically on the course for, I think it was like up to a week. So this was back in like early April, and I was impressed because, yeah, like you said, she's already in Western States, already punched her ticket, but she's taking.
She just wants to go race.
She wants to go race. That's the sense I get, and she's
cool.
Yeah, taking it incredibly seriously. So she's treating this like I mean, she's serious. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the winner of Western States last year, Beth Pascal, she came and crushed.
She demolished the score, yeah.
And then, it was amazing to watch her run for the first. Well, I think I was with her for the first 2 miles, and then she pulled away, and then I heard the gap was like 40 minutes or something at Forest Hill, and I was like, oh. She's gonna win. She's gonna win Western States, and then I picked her to win Western States, and then she did. Slight humble brag on the pick right there. But so okay, if Brittany Peterson is going to race, I think she will be the one to win.
Okay.
I have Anna Mae Flynn getting second, which I think might be a surprise to some. I don't think it is to me. Like when she's running healthy and she's fit and she's enjoying her training and everything, she is a phenomenal runner, and she's a really good climber on the running side of the climbing. I've raced against her a couple times at Lake Sonoma, and she's always been so strong in the second half, and she's no stranger to these trails either. I mean, she taught up in Olympic Valley at the school there for a number of years.
Okay.
Got to run so much on this course. So she
knows.
This is her backyard. She knows it. She knows what it takes to do this race. And it looks like, on Strava that she's put together some great running. So I think it's Anna Mae Flynn's time to come back and, start, kind of crushing the longer ultras again. It's been a couple years. She did run JFK last November, I believe, and I think she got like 7th or 8th. But her training recently has been looking great. For third, to round out the podium. So, I guess also on this side, the golden tickets will then all roll down one spot, assuming Brittany Peterson is in the podium, or I guess anywhere, because she already is going to Western States. I have Leah Yingling getting third, and she's a Utah.
So Salt Laker,
yeah, Salt Lake, yeah. She ran last year. I think I wrote it down. 6th. She got 6th at Canyons last year, but in between then and now, she has had some really good results. Ones that I think have given the evidence that her running, like her fitness, her racing has just gone up to the next level. One that I think is good enough for her to now get on the podium and race her way into Western States. She got 2nd at the Bear 100-mile last year, and recently just got 2nd at the Gorge Waterfalls 50K to Keely Henninger, who's also running Western States, and she's very fast. So I think the Leah stock is just on the up right now.
I agree.
So that's why I've got her on the podium. 4th, I have Ladia Albertson-Junkins, who just won Chuckanut. She has earned a golden ticket before, so I think she just kind of knows what that kind of racing and like what that kind of grit takes. Her Chuckanut run was phenomenal. So again, another person whose stock is on the up, and I think is just timing it right to Canyons. 5th place, I have Sarah Beal, who got 2nd at JFK last November, and that was to a on fire Devin Yanko. She had to DNF at Bandera at mile 48. I was reading her little Strava recap about it, and it sounded like it was just a bad decision made in regards to kind of gambling a little bit towards the end and blowing through an aid station, and kind of sounds like, more nutritional problems more so than, fitness or not having the legs. Her trainings looked really good. And, if she can just fix the mental errors, which is something that's, that's oftentimes what is the cause for races going sideways, especially ultras, is the mental errors when the, blood sugar levels start to get low later on. We just start to make poor decisions. If she sounds like she learned what the problem was at Bandera, I've got her to sneak into 5th. Dark horse pick. Is she a dark horse? Megan Morgan. She's like 24 years old, 4th at Bandera this year. She just missed a golden ticket. She ran 2:48 in the marathon at CIM last December. So good foot speed. Looks like training out of Boulder or around. Not a lot of race history, but perhaps one of those up and coming ultra ballers.
I'll give you my top 5. I've got Brittany Peterson winning, Leah Yingling 2nd, Megan Morgan 3rd, Sarah Beal 4th, Bridget Takuchi 5th. So at least 2 of those names are recognizable, Brittany and Leah, and I put them there for the same reasons you put them there. I think Leah's stock is on the rise. I think she's proved herself at some of the most important races in our sport. I think the only thing I would be concerned about there is just racing frequency. Like, she's put together a lot of great efforts, like this spring and late winter alone. Bandera was a great race. Where was she in Europe? Was it Trans Gran Canaria? I think she did the 60K there, was on the podium. So the only thing I would worry about is freshness. But if I understand correctly, I think she races a lot. Like, I think she's somebody that year in, year out is racing pretty frequently. So I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary.
Looking at her results, like she has like 3 results in 2022. Yeah. And then in 2021, she had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 just on Ultra Signa. Yeah,
so she races frequently. So I don't think this is something that's out of the ordinary, and maybe we don't even need to worry about it. But yeah, I have her 2nd. If she runs to her potential, I have her at 2nd. And then you mentioned on the men's side that last year 4 of the 5 winners ran in the trials. They're fast, and I don't think that any of these women have done the same, but they're all fast. Megan Morgan has that 2:48 marathon. Sarah Beal has a 2:42 marathon. And then Bridget Takuchi ran at Oregon State, so she's got collegiate experience. And she
I didn't know that.
Has a win at the Golden Gate 50K, which is formerly the North Face 50K up in the Marin Headlands. She ran that in 4:30, so she's fast. And again, I guess I'm kind of contrarian. I like to seek out people that nobody's talking about, and hopefully they can show up. And I mean, there's other people here like Abby Levine, Kat Bradley. You mentioned Anna Mae Flynn. You mentioned Ladia, Allison Baca. Like, those are all more familiar names, and they could have great days as well.
We can't ignore Kat Bradley.
No.
I mean, she is a Western States champion.
2nd at Leadville, 10th or was it 8th at UTMB one year? Like, she's put up great results.
Winning Western States is not the only good result she's ever had. Like, she's put together some really good races, and I guess the only reason why I didn't put her in my top 5 is I have no idea where her training or fitness is at as of right now. I mean, it seems like she's been living over on the Big Island in Hawaii, and it looks like she's been getting some good running in, but not a ton of big racing recently. It's hard to put a place on that one. But I mean, if she is fit and fresh and shows up to race, she'll be up there. Also one last, Ladia Albertson-Junkins, she has qualified for the Olympic trials in the marathon as well.
Yep, and she's fantastic. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think for me, a lot of my quote unquote dark horses I'm putting in that top 5. Probably Bridget is the biggest dark horse. And again, she's Strava dark. I couldn't find any training there, but did see some stuff
Yeah.
pre-January, and it was impressive.
Okay.
So I have some question marks. Like I wonder about Nicole Bitter. I know she's had a lot of great results in the past, but couldn't find much on Strava. Marianne Hogan won Bandera, and I'm not sure if she's racing. She might be hurt.
I read she had an ankle
Okay.
something at some point, but I cannot remember where I read that. I know she's had kind of injury issues in the past that has interrupted her, consistent racing, but another one of those people where it's like, if she's healthy and gets to the start line, she can win the race. She already has a golden ticket though.
Already got a golden
she
ticket,
won.
yeah.
She won Bandera. She crushed Bandera. So if she's on the fence, I would totally understand skipping canyons for the sake of getting healthy and getting in more training.
The one last question mark here for me is Katie Arnold, who I think in the past has won Leadville, I want to say. Yeah, she won Leadville in 2018.
According to the iRunFar preview,
Yeah.
it says she's not racing.
Wow.
Due to recovering from just a recent injury and just playing the long-term smart.
Bummer. Because it was interesting. I'm looking at her
Yeah.
ultra sign up right now, and she was signed up for the Western States training camp weekend, which
I know.
that's an awesome vote of
too.
confidence. Like, I'm going to sign up for canyons. I'm going to get that golden ticket. And you know what? I'm already going to go sign up for that training weekend.
Yeah, she has Run Rabbit on the long term.
That's awesome. Yeah.
September. So,
Well, that's good to know.
yeah, that was what I saw in iRunFar.
Okay. Cool. Well, we covered a lot of good ground here. We got the men's field, the women's field covered. Anything else on your mind about about this race before we go?
So, a question that I have, maybe how can I follow this race on Saturday? Oh, you know what? iRunFar is going to be at the
they
race.
are.
So I know there is at least going to be like Twitter coverage, which is honestly, I really like the Twitter coverage. I don't have notifications for Twitter turned on ever, but when a race like this is happening and iRunFar's covering it, I hit the bell on iRunFar's Twitter, and then I just get to go live my day, and then every 3 minutes I get a nice update with a picture about how everyone's doing, and I can paint the picture, in between. That's great. And that's at the moment, that's kind of really the best you can do out there, because there's no service out there. Like, I don't think there's not even any cell service at the finish line. So they're going to have like sat phones up there, trying their absolute hardest to get tweets with pictures out. So if there's any delays in coverage, that is why. I haven't checked, but ultralive.net has been the timing partner for this race, which at least is able to update all of the aid stations that have timing mats.
Yeah.
So we can at least get updates on placing for aid stations. I guess I just answered my own question, and all I needed to do is think a little bit harder.
In the meantime,
All right.
before we publish the episode, I will make sure to look to see if there are any new UTMB introduced innovations on that front. But
Yeah, for sure. Maybe part of that mandatory gear list will be like a GoPro. Everyone just has to vlog themselves. Which, I mean, I understand why they're, instating a mandatory gear list. There's a very minimal amount of mandatory gear, but I understand why there should be.
yeah.
It's a long day. You never know what's going to happen.
Well, dude, I think I might need to go run over to Salt Lake Running Company to pick up a pair of these New Balance Fuel Cell Rebel V2s before the race. You've convinced me
geez.
that the weather might be good enough to wear road shoes.
Now, what were you going to run?
I was thinking the Hoka Torrent, but it's kind of heavy.
The Hoka Torrent is not a heavy shoe. Also, don't do anything new on race day. That's the number one thing.
Dude,
Do not go to the running store and buy new shoes right now.
It was going to be the New Balance Fuel Cell or the Saucony Speed Roll. Take your pick.
Speedroll, that's not even a shoe. You can't fool me, Finn. I got every single model by every single company in my head. The Saucony speed roll, that's like saying I bought the Nike Zooms.
I think this is a good place to put a pin in it. This has been the Canyons 100K preview. We'll definitely do one of these for Western States and then UTMB and, as the series ramps up again, Javelina and so forth. So, man, this has been awesome. Thanks, Brett.
This has been great. And well, first off, good luck to you.
Thank you.
Also, good luck to your coach, Ryan Gelfie. I really hope that there's a bet on the line between you two.
Well, if we're betting, I'm betting on him. If you look on Twitter, I put him, he's going to finish 8th. I got him in the top. I got Gelfie in the top 10.
Don't short yourself, then. You're younger than him.
I have 2 left.
He's going to be wearing those fuel cells.
He's going to be wearing the fuel cells. Awesome, man. Well, hey, until next time, thanks again.
Cool, dude.